intellectual movement.
I've learned many things. Before coming here, I was a little bit aware of what was happening to the Kurdish population, and I understood, and of course I read the newspaper reports about what had happened in Kobani and Rawej. So, but I wasn't as aware of the background to all of this, or the details of it all, and it has been very informative for me to be able to understand more about Öcalan's role in animating the Kurdish cause in this part of Kurdistan, how it's different from what is going on in eastern Kurdistan, and also what the issues are, particularly in the relationship to the role of women, which is perhaps one of the most impressive parts of the stories that I've heard during this conference. And beyond that, I've also been always interested in urban problems, and particularly Murray Bookchin's ideas about democratic confederalism, and to be in a situation where there is some attempt to make those real on the ground is very exciting for me, and to hear more about that has been a very great learning experience for me. Well, I have not been to Rawej. I hope actually to go there later this year to see for myself how it is working. From the accounts I hear, it seems that the populations are organized in a variety of assemblies, and that each canton has a number of assemblies, and that this is a way of re-establishing, in the wake of a devastating war and a highly destructive phase of conflict, basic services of getting people bread and water, re-establishing education and the like. So I've heard accounts of that sort of organization, which is, I think, remarkable and very impressive in the wake of such a devastating conflict. And I have to say I'm full of admiration for what has happened. As far as I have heard about it, I would very much like to go and see it myself. For example, I would love to have the opportunity to go and talk and teach maybe a little bit in one of the academies that has been set up. I think this is, there are two sides to this. One is the immediate problems of how to revive an economy and re-establish a daily life for people on the ground in the wake of this devastation. And in a situation of that kind, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to think high thoughts and sort of debate grand schemas about the transition to socialism or something of that kind. You've got to find people daily bread, you've got to find them water, you've got to find them electricity, you've got to get basic social togetherness. But in the midst of that, you can start to see the formation of solidarities which suggest that an alternative economy can be built. And how that might happen and what might be done is something that people from outside can reflect upon and make suggestions about. But in the end, it will have to be decided on the ground what it is that really make sense to the people living there. I find that particularly those who've been involved in the struggle inside of in the Kobani and Rawej, I find them very inspirational, very confident in what they have done and how they have been. And I think it's, again, something that is emerging out of the struggle, which is not a demoralized population, but a population that has a lot of fire, political fire, and I think feels that not only is it right in terms of what it's doing, but that it has done something which is very significant, not only for what is going on there, but I think for the whole of the Kurdish cause, but also I think for all struggling peoples everywhere. I think that obviously the immediate struggle takes precedence in terms of the conference, for example. But clearly there is an idea that there's a relationship between the way in which state power is exercised and the existence of a capitalist system, and that to challenge state power also means to challenge the capitalist way. And I think that therefore the reconstruction of social life in Rawej and so on is very much about the reconstruction of a life which is not necessarily capitalistic. And so this is an opportunity to see if good ways of living and being can be re-established without reverting to the capitalist way of doing business, which is often highly destructive and relies upon authoritarian state power. I think only recently have his writings begun to be available in English, for example. I don't know how much of his work is translated into Spanish or other languages. But I would say that while most of us knew of him, most of us did not have the opportunity to read him. And it's only very recently that I, for example, have been able to read some of his texts. And I think that as his texts get more known, there will be more debate and discussion over his ideas about what an alternative economy may look like, what democratic confederalism is about, and the like. So I think that there is likely to be a growing interest in what he has to say and how he says it, at the same time as there will be a growing interest in some of the texts which I think he has used as part of his own inspiration, which particularly refers to the work of Murray Bookchin. Well, I think you can't understand what's going on in the region without understanding the significance of oil in the global economy. And I think a lot of the problems of the region actually go back to the interest of the major capitalist powers in controlling access to the oil and making sure that everything kind of works. But I think beyond that, there is also a geopolitical interest. I mean, the Middle East area is crucial in relationship to, what's going, how the West approaches the East, put in those broad terms. It's geopolitically significant in relationship to the conflict that was there in the Cold War between what was the Soviet Union and the rest of the world, but that has not gone away because Russia and the United States are not good friends, and there's a crisis in the Ukraine. Central Asia is difficult. So it's a crucial geopolitical region, which even in the absence of oil, I think would be a place where all of the powers of the world are trying to manipulate in some way or other. We often use a geological metaphor and call this region a shatter zone, because it's like a big power block here another power block there, and another one over here, and they're all kind of pressing in and creating, shattering societies in the Middle East. So it's a sort of shatter zone where these forces are colliding. This is one of the things that I would like you to tell me, because I don't really know the answer to that. And I think that IS has surprised most of us living in the West. We didn't anticipate anything like that happening. And so it's been very hard, I think, to understand it and, why some things have happened in the way they've happened. So I really don't feel I'm in a position to explain any of that. I think the situation in Rojava is unstable, and it has to be stabilized, I think, militarily. There is going to be, I think, a difficult period if things settle down about the Syrian state reclaiming it and trying to subdue it. So there will be difficulties in the future, I'm sure. And whether they can remain semi-autonomous, as the Zapatistas have managed to do, is an interesting kind of question. I hope they can, because then we can start to think about the different forms of organization that may displace and replace capitalism and the capitalist state apparatus. I don't have any recommendations. I always feel that let the people decide, and it is precisely the point about democratic confederalism, that we don't have outside people coming in and telling them what to do or even how to do it, that actually we wait for the people in their assemblies to decide, and then we try to support and push so that gets recognition and it gets the outside help that it may need. For example, I think it's very important that the PKK be taken off the global terrorist list. I think that given what has happened, there should be a worldwide move in public opinion to take PKK off the terrorist list, and that would then, I think, liberate a lot of possibilities which don't currently exist. Obviously, the PKK, for example, has its roots in a Marxist analysis, but it has developed, I think, its own distinctive form of that analysis, which is very much geared to the idea of emancipation, which is, of course, a crucial Marxist category. So I think that the way in which that idea of emancipation is advanced, and I think that you could say that there is a demand here for emancipatory politics, which is acknowledged by the rest of the world, that the rest of the world should view the Kurdish cause in terms of respect and dignity and the right to self-determination. And so there are all of these aspects which have an international element. And I think that, again, that is not for the people inside of Kobani and Rojava to do. That's our job on the outside, to try to sort of persuade the rest of the world that this is a valid and very humane and humanistic movement which has been subject to considerable oppression, and it needs to be emancipated. And one of the things we have to do is to try to push the rest of the world to acknowledge that. I'm not a scholar of Öcalan's work, and as I said, only recently has it become available in English, and I have read very little of it, and some of it I've read in a very superficial way. I would like to do a much more detailed study of what he says, and I know that they have evolved, his thinking has evolved on this topic, but I heard some accounts here. I don't know whether they're correct or not. I want to read his work and make up my own mind. Well, I mean, I think they are interpreting what he's saying, and I don't know whether they're true or not. And so that's my question. Is I want to find out for myself what he's saying. Well, I probably would agree with some things and disagree with others, but I just don't know. I mean, he's obviously a very creative thinker, and creative thinkers change and evolve, and he's obviously evolved his ideas in specific ways. And again, I think I'm very interested to find out how his ideas have evolved and see where they're likely to evolve to next. But I can say some things. For instance, on the question of women, he has been extremely progressive and has, I think, advanced Marxist thinking very significantly in terms of women's role and the positionality of women in society. And this is not simply about positionality of women in Kurdish society. It's a general kind of thing about the positionality of women worldwide. So in that respect, I know that he's evolved in ways that I feel very, very positive about. And I also feel very positive about his embrace of the ideas of social ecology and his ideas about democratic confederalism. These are ideas that I have been working with on the basis of Marx, but I recognize they go beyond Marx. And I think that he has gone beyond Marx in those areas too, and I applaud him for doing that.